สวัสดีครับแฟนเพจแฟนช่องหนุ่มกับนายทุกท่านนะครับผมกำลังอยู่กับซามูเอลลักเคิร์สนะครับผู้สื่อข่าวที่เขียนเรื่องราวของแมนเชสเตอร์ยูไนเต็ดมากมายนะครับจากแมนเชสเตอร์อีฟนิ่งนิวส์นะครับก็ขออนุญาตทักทายลักเคิร์สก่อนนะครับเพราะว่าจะมีคำถามมากมายที่เราจะถามเขาเกี่ยวกับในเรื่องของสโมสรในวันนี้นะครับ so here we are Samuel Luckhurst the chief Manchester United writer from Manchester Evening News yeah
Thank you for having me on. Matt. Nice to speak to you again.
Yeah, because Thai fans are really addict your news. Yeah, in the website,
Yeah, well, that's very nice to hear. It's very busy at the moment, anyway. Put it that way.
Okay. So it's like you said, it seems like United has huge root problems. From your opinion, what really make United lose that track? The Glazers, director of football, or maybe recruitment team, or Erik ten Hag himself?
It's a mix, really. I don't think anybody is absolved of the blame for the current situation. The ownership has been a problem for a very long time. They do not allow the club to invest a sufficient amount in transfer windows. The most they've ever spent on permanent signings in a summer transfer window was £150 million, I think, and that was back in 2014. They've never broken that barrier. Other clubs have broken that barrier and are more proactive with their investment. That's just not going to happen under the Glazer family. They're not putting their money in the club. It's the cash flow that they're dependent on. And the commercial side of Manchester United has taken a hit in recent years because they're not successful anymore, and they're not a club that sponsors want to be associated with as much as they used to, because there has been a lack of success. And beyond the ownership, the hierarchy is a problem because there aren't enough credible people in positions there to turn the club around. John Murtough has still got a hell of a lot to prove as football director. Richard Arnold as chief executive is presiding over an even more disastrous summer than any of the summers Ed Woodward was involved in. So that's another problem. There's a lack of leadership at the top, on site in England, in Manchester, overseeing day-to-day operations. That needs to change. They need to get their act together. The choice of Ten Hag was a debatable one. It was always going to be Ten Hag or Mauricio Pochettino. And already we've seen signs why some of us had reservations about Ten Hag, because he is still managing as if he is managing Ajax. And managing Ajax in the Eredivisie is completely different to managing Manchester United in the Premier League. It is a different standard. It is a different level of scrutiny. It is a different level of pressure. And trying to implement your methods with these players in the intensity of the Premier League is very difficult unless you have the right players. And so Ten Hag has been let down to an extent there because Manchester United have not made the key signings that they needed to by this point. But he is complicit in that because he has been driving the pursuit of Frenkie de Jong, whereas other people at Manchester United would have walked away from a move for Frenkie de Jong some time ago now, because of the situation, because of the state of play there. And as far as the players are concerned, many of them are just not good enough to meet the demands of a classic Manchester United side. They can't handle the pressure. They cannot handle the expectation that comes with playing for Manchester United. That was proven last season when supporters were allowed back inside stadiums and the playing field was levelled. It should have really startled the people at Manchester United just how well the players adapted to playing games without supporters present when it was the behind closed doors games, because that was not a reliable gauge of football. The most reliable gauge of football is when you're playing with a crowd present, when you can hear them singing, when they're abusing you or whatever they're saying. It's a different pressure altogether. Playing in the behind closed doors games is like playing at a training ground. So that was why there were so many freakish results in that 2020-21 season in the Premier League. And of course, United were involved in a couple of them, negatively in the 6-1 defeat to Tottenham, but positively in the 9-0 thrashing of Southampton. But then the way they performed the next season, that should have told the people at Manchester United that this squad is not up to the standard that they expect from Manchester United players, and they needed to make more changes in the summer, but those changes haven't happened, and there's not a lot of time left for them now to get rid of players and get players in, because the transfer window closes the week after next.
Okay, thank you. There's some tools to develop recruitment system called data analysis and data science, which Manchester City and Liverpool established this before United for about 10 years. John Murter once said about Dominic Jordan, director of data science, in your opinion, what can United do to reduce the gap from City and Liverpool? Because the data things might help United in the next transfer windows for years to come.
It might, but it's not particularly helping them in this one, because the way they're going about targeting players is very scattergun. The move for Marko Arnautovic was embarrassing, possibly the biggest embarrassment of the Glazers' ownership, which is nearly 17 and a half years, because he's a 33-year-old who left the Premier League 3 years ago. He'd played in China for 2 of the last 3 years. And he's not going to be starting for he wouldn't have been starting for Manchester United, and it's just the embarrassment of it. You could see the online backlash from supporters, how appalled they were at the prospect of Manchester United signing him. And of course, there were allegations against Arnautovic in the past, which were very troubling, and Manchester United fans were unhappy that the club clearly didn't do their due diligence. And this is another issue with the club. They don't thoroughly do due diligence on players in terms of their personality, their medical history. There is still a long way to go there. Maybe next year, with a new data scientist, they will go about their transfer window in a more orderly and calmer way. I suppose this year, Erik ten Hag was appointed in late April, so there's not a lot of time to get their ducks in line, so to speak, where you've got players lined up who fit what this manager wants. You've got a lot of work to do in a short window from when Erik ten Hag was brought in to when the season ended, and you essentially go about trying to sign the players. But still, I don't think anybody really imagined that they would have been this bad at this stage in a summer where a squad rebuild was expected and is needed. Let's face it, after what happened last season. Last season was probably the club's worst season in well over 30 years. Some have argued that it was their worst season since they were relegated in 1973-74. But a lot of people at the club have clearly underestimated just how bad it was last season. And I also think the positivity from some of the pre-season results has maybe given the club another reason not to do as much business as they should have done by now in the transfer window.
The fans are confused whether some players Erik ten Hag has chosen by himself or someone the club advised him. Can you explain this to us?
It's a very good question, because the way clubs normally operate is that they would have a sporting director who would be recommending players, or there would be a conversation between the manager and the sporting director, or the football director, or the director of football, whatever their title. And they may agree to disagree on certain targets, but they would agree on other targets. In the case of Manchester United, they are clearly just backing the manager and allowing him to cherry pick players that he wants to sign. But the problem is that is no way of running a football club. They are trying to sign, or have signed, players who are familiar to Erik ten Hag. In the case of Christian Eriksen, he played for Ajax and he trained with Ajax under Erik ten Hag earlier this year when he was building up his fitness after his cardiac arrest last year. So he was familiar to ten Hag. Tyrell Malacia played against Ajax when Erik ten Hag was manager. Lisandro Martinez played under Erik ten Hag for Ajax. Frenkie de Jong, who obviously ten Hag wants in midfield, he played for him at Ajax. And he also wanted to sign Antony, who is still at Ajax and played for him at Ajax last season. But you only have to look at Manchester City, for example, since they were taken over by Sheikh Mansour in 2008. So over the last 14 years, they have only ever signed one player from the Eredivisie, which was Angelino. And Angelino was actually a product of City's academy. He was sold to PSV Eindhoven. They exercised a buyback clause. Angelino came back to Manchester City. He was involved in 2 very bad defeats to Liverpool and United in 2019. And come the January transfer window, he was sold to RB Leipzig. So they were very decisive in concluding that he was not a good signing, that he'd failed, and they managed to sell him quite quickly to a club that was interested in that winter transfer window. And it's strange why Manchester United are just allowing Erik ten Hag to sign players from a league where, although it's a very technical league and it's beneficial for certain players' development, it is so low in standard that Manchester United were looking to loan out Ahmad to Feyenoord last year to benefit his development. Ahmad then obviously went to Rangers in Scotland at the start of this year, and he struggled. He did not perform very well at all for them. So that's how lowly the standard is in Holland. But of course, United are trying to sign players from there, or have signed players from there. So it's the wrong strategy. And also, the next Manchester United manager, whenever they come in, whenever that may be, they will look at that squad, and if it's overloaded with players from Holland or who have played in Holland, they're almost certainly not going to want that, and they'll want to gut that squad, and then you're having to start all over again. They need a clear strategy of selecting and recruiting players who fit the image of a Manchester United player.
Thank you. Moreover, Samuel, there are many players linked with United recently. We as the fans hope that the recruitment team will find players that will be a prospect for the future, such as Chik Degure from Crystal Palace and Matheus Nunes, who close to join Wolverhampton. But the names like Morata, Casemiro, Vardy, Icardi came across the reports. Do Ten Hag want these players himself, or is advice from recruitment team, or it's just rumors? Because fans feel that the club interests in many well-known players, and someone nearly past his peak or past that peak, instead of finding and searching for young and exciting talents.
I agree, it's the wrong way of going about it, and where they are so desperate to bring players in now. And after the Arnautovic bid the other week, anything goes. Any Tom, Dick or Harry is getting linked with Manchester United, or linking themselves with Manchester United, because it seems possible that they could join Manchester United, because United decided to bid for Marko Arnautovic. And so now they're having to look at players on a short-term basis, which goes completely against their recruitment strategy of the last 3 years, even though there were some very glaring exceptions over that period, such as Odin Igalo, Edinson Cavani, and of course Cristiano Ronaldo, because they were players who were in their 30s, and all of them were signed on a short-term basis as well. And the circumstances of signing all 3 of them were quite troubling, and it just, again, it confirms suspicions that United were not in as good a place as they claimed they were regarding recruitment. And it's inexplicable why they've not drawn up a list of players who are at a good age, who have had quite good careers so far, but want to make a progressive move in their career, who have played at a good level and who are affordable. They should have had that list drafted up in a very in a very specific way, but also a way where it was clear that they'd cast the net wide to identify these players. That list should have been finalised in January, but it clearly wasn't. And of course, with Ralf Rangnick leaving the club in May, before his consultancy contract even became active, he recommended 3 RB Leipzig players, a centre-back, a midfielder and a forward. Manchester United will not be signing any of those players, and instead they made attempts to sign Benjamin Sesko and Timo Werner. and Benjamin Sesko and Timo Werner have of course just signed for RB Leipzig. So you couldn't make it up is a phrase that we use in England, which is just essentially it means that it's so unbelievable that you almost have to laugh or cry about it, and that there are fundamental issues with the way Manchester United are going about their recruitment strategy this summer, and nobody at the club is defending it anymore.
Thank you และนี่คือ Samuel Luckhurst นะครับแล้วเจอกันใหม่ในโอกาสหน้าครับขอบคุณที่ติดตามครับสวัสดีครับ